After the war, Blackrock get to profit from rebuilding Ukraine. But we're still in the war now, so who's going to profit? It's the weapons industry. The mainstream media have admitted that Ukraine is a weapons lab for the West. They sound better than that when they explode. These weapons are brilliant. Hello there, you 6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on this voyage towards truth and freedom. Be present in this moment is the only thing that's real. Awaken personally so we can awaken collectively. Don't be deluged in the lies of the mainstream media. Do not fall into hate. Do not fall into thinking that your life is about who you oppose. We have to form new unity, new unions, so that we can confront the very real establishment power together. Today's story is about the Ukraine being used as a weapons lab. Essentially, many of the weapons that are being sent by the US military-industrial complex are being trialed for a future conflict. Oh, that'll be good. So if we don't die in Armageddon as a result of this proxy war between America and Russia, we can die in the actual war between America and China. Phew, something to look forward to then. Ukraine has turned into a lab for Western arms as the war has given the US and its allies an opportunity to see how their weapons fare in a conflict with a major military power like Russia, CNN reported on Monday. A source familiar with Western intelligence on the war told CNN that Ukraine is absolutely a weapons lab in every sense because none of this equipment has ever actually been used in a war between two industrially developed nations. Normally we like to bomb people who don't have any weapons at all. Bomb a terrorist, bomb a wedding, bomb 2 weddings, do another terrorist in a minute. So this, in a sense, is very legitimately a real opportunity to trial these weapons. Ukraine has become a testing ground for state-of-the-art weapons and information systems and new ways to use them that Western political officials and military commanders predict could shape warfare for generations to come. The problem is there won't be generations to come if we keep provoking former and actual superpowers. Russia, yeah, they've been on decline since the Soviet Union when we made that deal with them not to infringe on former Soviet Union territories. Let's provoke them. China, they're probably not that hard. But why take my word for it? I have, after all, got this hat on. Let's listen to the Ukrainian Minister of Defense. He surely knows something about Ukrainian defense and how it's being ministered.
Ми виконуємо місію НАТО сьогодні.
This guy's a fucking liability, by the way. He keeps turning up on television and goes, yes, of course it is a proxy war. Yeah, we're testing weapons.
You're saying that Ukraine is de facto NATO member.
It's true. It's a fact.
He's going to get a phone call from Zelensky.
Без втрати їхньої крові, з втратою нашої крові.
We carry out the mission of NATO today without the loss of their blood, with the loss of our blood. Wow. So there is a pact, because wars like Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan became unpopular because America doesn't like to see its children coming home dead. There's now an agreement to outsource the conflict in order to confront opponents, but without the bad PR of the loss of American lives. Okay. And also, look, it is the mission of NATO, explicitly. Crazy. This is the Ukrainian Minister of Defense. This is not a guy of the equivalent of InfoWars in Ukraine. He's from the government.
Тому для них треба витрачати їх зброю.
Because they need to spend their weapons. So there you are. I mean, you can tell me whether you think that's conspiracy theory or not. If it is a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy theory that emerges from the heart of Ukrainian government. Ukraine's Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Digital Transformation says, Ukraine is the best test ground as we have the opportunity to test all hypotheses in battle and introduce revolutionary change in military tech and modern welfare, said Mikhailo Fedorov. So in a sense, there are mutual interests. America benefits from being able to provoke and potentially drain Russia. NATO benefits from this new alliance. Ukraine benefits because they are opponents to Russia, and Russia has invaded them, whatever the circumstances of that invasion were, and they are now able to fight at a level that is not representative of their military or economic power or standing in the geopolitical landscape. So everyone is benefiting from this, except potentially everyone if there's a nuclear war. The use of remote-controlled boats could become particularly important, military experts said, showing how warfare at sea might play out as the United States and its allies brace for potential future naval aggressions by China in the East and South China Seas and against Taiwan. Really, wouldn't you prefer a world in which diplomatic solutions were being sought by these major superpowers? Because we do not benefit from these conflicts. It has ever been thus. Economically, interest will benefit from these conflicts. You won't. The CNN report said that for the US military, the war has become an incredible source of data on the utility of its own systems. For example, the US has seen that its HIMARS rocket launch system has been effective against Russian forces. Hey, that's a very effective rocket. Look, we've killed all those Russians. Oh, what are they doing now? Oh, they're telling Putin. And what's he he doing? Oh, he's going behind his desk. And what's that button he's going to press? Oh, this is a real triumph. The war in Ukraine has also created a demand for weapons that were beginning to become obsolete, such as the Stinger shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. Fire sale! Everything must go! Over-the-shoulder missile launchers, now at half price! Shouldn't be a war that's about bargains. You're continually told about, this is helping Ukrainian grandmothers, these orphans, and all this stuff. It's really, essentially, Walmart, but for weapons. But not only that, Raytheon stopped producing Stingers for years, but now has been asked by the Pentagon to ramp up production as thousands have been shipped to Ukraine. Let's see how the mainstream media covers this contentious issue of arms sales and spending billions of dollars of taxpayer revenue on a war that could lead to a global conflagration. I expect it will be balanced and transparent.
A secret location, a precious weapon.
Fetishizing the weapon. A precious weapon. Look at you, baby.
The High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, or HIMARS, a powerful gift from the United States to Ukraine.
A powerful gift, a sexy weapon. It's going to be so good to get that radioactive rain tumbling onto my face, knowing it was such a sexy phallic missile that provokes the conflict.
So far, they've only received 4 of these launches, but the scorch marks on the Earth show they've been busy.
When I see a scorch mark on the Earth, I think, yay, we've been busy, baby. Hopefully, if they get the maximum number of weapons possible, the whole Earth will be one bloody great big scorch mark. Brilliant.
The operators say its accuracy and range, about 44 miles, allows them to hit important sites deep inside Russian-controlled territory. The local pro-Russian forces were in no doubt. Only Ukraine's new HIMARS could have done this.
In a sense, you shouldn't be fetishizing war and conflict. Ukrainian people are dying, Russian people are dying. I believe that no one is ultimately benefiting from this except for the most elite interests in the world.
In another sign of the HIMARS' ability to influence this war, Ukrainian leaders can't stop saying thank you. No other donated weapon has inspired so much public gratitude.
Donated weapon, the language around this is a profitable endeavour that allows the West to test pilot weapons that they may be able to use in future conflicts. Of course they want to present that as humanitarian aid. Of course they want CNN puff pieces. The Ukrainians say, I thank her. But this is something that is contentious and dangerous and requires responsibility, not only with the decisions that are made, but the way that we are informed about the nature of those decisions.
This commander wants to thank the American people and President Biden for providing a weapon that is helping Ukraine stay in the fight.
Oh, Lockheed Martin, I've heard of them somewhere. I wonder how much money they made this year.
And that's why their message to their allies is unchanged.
So CNN there are just presenting essentially a commercial for Lockheed Martin and their products, dressing it up as aid to the Ukrainian struggle.
Please send more weapons now.
Don't worry, more weapons are coming. That's the news. Lockheed Martin announced recently that it plans to expand its production of the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, better known as HIMARS, or HIMARS, by more than 50%. So it's a good job that there's a commercial right in the middle of the news saying that we need more of them. The decision follows months of positive publicity for the weapons system on the news, which seems to have sparked increased interest from governments in Eastern Europe. Of course it does. That's propaganda. That's the function of propaganda. The announcement comes just a month after the army said it wanted to double HIMARS production and triple production of certain types of artillery in response to the war in Ukraine. This type of boost would require new or at least dramatically expanded production facilities, raising concerns that it will be difficult to scale back down in the future. Hopefully we can have another war then. Keep production just rolling on. Large defence companies are already seeing their share prices go up as investors anticipate the impact of the war on profits. As of June 2022, Lockheed Martin has seen an increase of 14%. Of course they have. They've got CNN on board, doing news broadcasts that essentially highlight the demand for their product as a pious endeavour. Jack Reed, Democrat, and Jim Inhofe, Republican, recently proposed a new amendment to this year's National Defense Authorization Act. The proposal would give the Department of Defense wartime powers that would free it to buy huge amounts of artillery and other munitions using multi-year contracts. Of course, we mention that to highlight that whether you are pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, you are pro the military-industrial complex, you are pro your tax dollars being spent on this war. And again, let me iterate that supporting Ukrainian people, ending this conflict should be an absolute priority. The message that patriotism and profits for the military-industrial complex are one one fused idea is a propagandist one. I believe what's best for Ukrainian people is a peaceful solution as soon as possible. This amendment will mean that they don't have to vote on it, no one has to talk about it. Essentially, your money can be funneled directly into Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. That's exactly what they want to be able to tell their shareholders. The amendment would also authorize the Pentagon to skip competitive contracting for Ukraine-related deals, including billions of dollars worth of contracts to refill US stockpiles, and it would waive other provisions aimed at stopping weapons makers from overcharging taxpayers. So they're going to be able to set their own prices, there won't be competition, all these ideas. Remember how often, if you hear sort of what you might regard as socialist rhetoric, no, entrepreneurialism, capitalism, free market competition, this is what generates ingenuity. Well, we're going to be really taking a hit on the ingenuity here because they're not competing, they're not signing it off, and they're not having to account for their expenditure. There is also legislation pending in Congress that indicates that the US government believes the Ukraine war may continue for years. Fingers crossed. On October the 11th, the Senate Armed Services Committee submitted its amended draft of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2023. Nestled within the draft is a provision that would establish an emergency multi-year plan to award massive defense contracts to Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, BAE Systems, and other war corporations to produce weapons for Ukraine and to replenish US stockpiles, as well as those of foreign allies and partners. So, whether or not it's this war or future wars, there is kind of a policy and an intention to continue with conflict in order to service these kind of deals. Congress is supportive of this. They're going to give us multi-year authority and they're going to give us funding to really put into the industrial base. And I'm talking billions of dollars into the industrial base to fund these production lines, said the Pentagon's chief weapons buyer, Bill LaPlante. And Bill LaPlante is an accurate name because he's been planted there by a corrupt system. So when we're talking about this war, we're talking about this conflict and we're focusing on Putin's brutality and endless array of diseases and Russia's criminal invasion, all of which is true, and the suffering of Ukrainian people, certainly true. It is operating as a veil to prevent us seeing that, much like the pandemic, this situation is highly beneficial to some of the most powerful interests in the world. And if what could be regarded as a crisis for you and for me is beneficial to the most powerful interests in the world, what kind of outcomes do you anticipate? Do you think there's going to be an end to the war, or do you think that the war will continue? Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments. A recent Ukrainian embassy reception was sponsored by Northrop, Lockheed and Raytheon. We appreciate what you're doing over there, Zelensky. That's why we've put on this lovely buffet for you. Look at all these beautiful missiles. Actually, that one's a baguette. Here it is, all of the details and all of the information, and look who sponsors it. Northrop Grumman, yep, Raytheon Tech, Lockheed Martin. I suppose you have to highlight certain aspects of this conflict, the suffering of Ukrainian people, the brutality of Putin, in order to distract you from the fact that this is systemic, this is built into the system. There is a beautiful invitation sponsored by the military-industrial complex. Whatever you think about this war, if it were ended right now, it will be a problem for those powerful interests that spend a fortune on lobbying and that are benefiting hugely from this situation. And with the added advantage of being able to test pilot their products for future conflicts, which they appear to be agitating for elsewhere. As documented in a Pulitzer Prize winning series in 2008, the Pentagon orchestrated the commentary of 75 former officers who served as radio and TV analysts, turning them into message force multipliers for the administration's point of view. Many of the retired officers who appeared on TV worked for companies that counted on military contracts, creating a built-in conflict that news organizations didn't mention when introducing the analysts. So what this video shows you is how CNN, a media partner, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon work together in order to pursue a common end. You don't need a conspiracy. You don't need hoods and reptiles or any of that stuff when you can see in plain sight that there is a convergence of interests. The weapons industry are benefiting, the US state are benefiting, the media are benefiting. All of these people individually benefit, their interests align. There is no requirement for clandestine conspiracy when overtly interests converge. This is one of the issues that we want to continually observe. This is not conspiracy theory. This is not crazy wackiness. This is just the system and the machine doing what it does. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Remember, turn on the notification bell right now because, as you are surely beginning to understand, the system is not your friend and the algorithm is your enemy. We make content like this every single day and we need you to be loyal to us. Watch us every day. Stay free.